Seth, the god of destruction, had murdered Osiris, the god who reigned supreme in Egyptian mythology. Set took the throne from his brother for himself and unleashed his reign of terror. Nevertheless, Osiris had generated an heir together with the goddess Isis. His name was Horus. This was a falcon god, whose prophecy said that he would reign over the skies and would bring the light back to Egypt, ending the darkness brought by Seth. Horus, already an adult, decided to claim his throne, which had been usurped by his uncle. The contention is judged by the gods, while the court, presided over by the sun god Ra, decided who would be worthy to sit on the throne. A series of clashes between Seth and Horus had begun. Seth had Ra's sympathy, since the usurper protected the sun god from the serpent Apophis, while the latter crossed the skies. Seth proposed a challenge to Horus. Both would have to transform themselves into hippos and should be submerged for 3 months. Horus relied on his mother, the goddess Isis, to take advantage of Seth's vulnerability to kill him. The goddess felt sympathy for Seth and could not kill him. This betrayal enraged Horus, who then attacked his mother, cutting off her head. The god Thoth, the deity of knowledge, saved the goddess, replacing the severed head with a cow's head. The clash between Seth and Horus continued for many years. When fighting in the desert, Seth managed to pluck Horus's eyes. Due to Hathor's help, the goddess of love, Horus had his vision restored. The court of gods demanded a reconciliation between Seth and Horus. The evil god, pretending to be benevolent, invited Horus for a feast in his palace. During the night, Seth tried to abuse his nephew, making him unworthy to the throne. However, Horus managed to defend himself and prevented the god's poisonous seed. Horus decided to take revenge and, with the help of the goddess Isis, the god placed his divine seed in lettuce leaves, which were then offered to Seth by the goddess Isis. The god of barren deserts ate the contaminated lettuce. Poisoned, Seth started to deteriorate in front of everyone, and a golden disc emerged in his forehead. Thoth grabbed the bright disc and ingrained it in her own head. Seth had been humiliated, and that was when, after 80 years, the court granted Horus the throne that was his by right. Isis couldn't be more proud to see her son, with Osiris assuming the father's throne. Seth's fate was to travel with Ra, the sun god of the skies, and his enraged screams could be heard with thunder. And so, Horus's reign over Egypt began.
Chaos, storms and war. Also known to the ancient Egyptians as Seth and Suit, Seth was the brother of Horus the Elder, Osiris and Isis, Nephthys' brother, husband and uncle to Horus the Younger. Taweret, Egypt's hippo-headed goddess of fertility and childbirth, was Seth's other wife. One of the initial 5 gods from a union between Jub or earth and Nut or sky after the world was created. His name translates as destroyer and instigator of confusion. Seth was linked to the color red, harsh desert terrain, foreign people and disorder, which provide a telling insight into the Egyptian psyche. Occasionally Seth is shown as a shaggy red-haired beast complete with cloven hooves and forked tail, or a red, very shaggy dog-like creature. His animal totems were the crocodile, hippopotamus, griffin and tortoise. However, he was primarily connected with a serpent form. Facts about Seth. Seth was ancient Egypt's god of chaos, war, storms, darkness, the desert and drought. Seth was one of the 5 Osirian gods, brother of Horus the Elder, Osiris and Isis, husband and brother of Nephthys and Horus the Younger's uncle. Seth's other wife was Egypt's hippo-headed goddess of childbirth and fertility, Taweret. Seth was one of the first 5 gods born of the god Jub and Nut, the sky goddess, following the creation of the world. Seth's name means destroyer and instigator of confusion. Seth was identified with red, the color, disorder, people from foreign lands and arid desert terrain. Seth is depicted as a shaggy, red dog-like creature or a shaggy red-haired beast with a forked tail and cloven hooves. The serpent was his primary form. His animal totems were the crocodile, tortoise, griffin and hippopotamus. Seth's primary cult centers were at Everes and Ombos. Seth murdered Osiris, whose son, Horus, later avenged his father by killing Seth. Seth's origins. Originally a god of Upper Egypt in the south and the desolate lands beyond Egypt's borders, Seth was known as the ruler of the south, Seth, and the lord of the desert. Originally in Egypt's early dynastic period, c. 3150 to c. 2613 BCE, Seth was a friendly god springing from the Upper Egypt kingdom. His name was called forth in creating love spells and often engraved on love charms. Seth was the god who saved Ra, the sun god, from Apophis the serpent, a creature of evil who attempted to stop the sun god's journey across the night sky to the dawn. Seth was also depicted as a patron who assisted the people during their lives and helped them following their deaths. By the New Kingdom, 1570 to 1069 BCE, Seth had become best known as the first murderer, who first murdered Osiris, his older brother, to grab power over the world before attempting to kill Horus, Osiris' son. Just why Seth's image and attributes altered from a god-hero to the adversary of justice and harmony remains unknown. Once the Osiris myth gained popularity in the New Kingdom, Seth's conversion was complete. Common people and pharaohs such as Sethi I, Sethnacht, and Sethi II continued to summon his name when seeking help. Seth was also linked with distant goddesses such as Ugarit's warrior goddess Anat and Phoenicia's Astarte, their queen of heaven. Scholars believe he was a manifestation of the vast dry, barren desert landscape and foreign lands beyond Egypt. Seth's mythical history. As firstborn of the gods, Osiris was the ruler of the world, which, to ancient Egyptians, implied their Egyptian lands. Osiris saw his people as uncivilized, so gifted culture and agriculture to them, created laws and showed them the proper rites to worship their gods. Seth envied Osiris' power, resenting his successful rule. This acrimony became more intense after Nephthys, his wife, captivated by Osiris' handsome looks, disguised herself as Isis and seduced Osiris and had his child, the god Anubis. Seth had a majestic casket made, matching Osiris' precise measurements. He hosted a sumptuous party and following their banquet he announced a special surprise. Furious, he swore he himself would punish this criminal and restore their land. Isis then showed her true form and revealed the gods had been listening. Ra was finally convinced Horus deserved to rule and Seth was exiled from the Nile Valley and forced into the wastelands of the desert. Seth's transformation. From the time of the New Kingdom onwards, Seth was usually regarded as a villain. In the early dynastic period Peribsen, the Second Dynasties, c. 2890 to c. 2670 BCE, 6th king, chose Seth for his patron god. Peribsen remains the sole early dynastic period king to align with Seth rather than Horus. Given Seth was originally a god-hero, it is logical that a pharaoh would select him as his patron. However, by Peribsen's time, Horus was associated with the throne, not Seth. One probable explanation is Peribsen, who hailed from Upper Egypt, selected Seth for his personal patron in preference to Horus, who was linked with Lower Egypt around this time. Peribsen remains the sole pharaoh to clearly align himself with Seth until Sethi I, 1290 to 1279 BCE, and his son Ramesses II, 1279 to 1213 BCE, of the 19th dynasty, who anointed Seth a national god and built the Seth Hermerua temple complex in Seth's honor. Seth's role. When Ramesses II opted to elevate Seth, the cult of Osiris and Isis was widespread, and Seth had metamorphosed from a hero protector and the god of love, into a malefactor who represented everything Egyptians feared: chaos, destruction, disorder, drought, hunger, famine and foreign influences. Carvings showing Ramesses II's coronation depict both Horus and Seth officiating over the ceremony. Eventually, however, Seth became so indelibly associated with his actions as a usurper and vile murderer that the god of writing and wisdom, Thoth, replaced him in these inscriptions. Seth's continued popularity reflects the Egyptians' desire for harmony and balance as symbolized by Mat. Mat symbolized balance and harmony and was a core part of most Egyptians' social values and permeated even into their vision of the afterlife. Here the deceased's heart was weighed on golden scales against the white feather of Mat. Egypt's god of life and fertility Osiris needed a counterweight, and Seth, the god of chaos and destruction. Even in his destructive aspect, Seth was seen as beneficial as he voluntarily restrained drought and his dry desert twins from assailing Egypt's fertile lands. Prayers to Seth seeking deliverance from his own forces replaced earlier love amulets. Seth's cult worship was centered from the early dynastic period in Ombos. However, temples dedicated to him could be found throughout Egypt. The priests of Seth cared of his sacred statue in his temple's inner sanctum. They performed the day-to-day rituals and maintained the sprawling temple complex. People petitioning Seth for assistance were confined to the outer courtyard, where they left donations or made requests for help from the priests. These requests ranged from financial or medical help to marital advice to officiating at festivals, funerals or weddings. Seth was absorbed into early Christian mythology as the devil. Seth's association with wickedness and darkness, his popular image as a red-haired beast together with the color red, were readily adaptable to the Christian Satan's iconography. Seth's connection with cunning, deceit, destruction, war and a close association with the serpent contributed to casting the Christian mythology around a supernatural deceiver who swore perpetual antipathy with God. Reflecting on the past, the evolution of Seth provides a fascinating window onto the changes that took place in ancient Egypt's belief system over the long course of their history.
Kemetic science, misapplication of the netter Set and white supremacy's endurance. By the end of this screencast, you'll understand the netter Set and the misapplication of this netter by people of color that keeps racism and white supremacy in place. You'll learn the difference between being a librarian and a scientist in respect to ancient Kemetic knowledge. You will learn why praying and spreading knowledge are not enough to end white supremacy and racism. Let's talk Kemetic science rather than finger pointing and attacks. So let's get to it. Ever wonder where the idea of Satan originated and why he has horns? Have you ever wondered why praying and spreading knowledge have yet to have a widespread impact in removing the system of racism and white supremacy? Have you ever wondered why whites that have practiced racism and white supremacy have gained so much power over the centuries? The answer and solution to all three questions are tied to ancient Kemetic science. The ancient Africans didn't have a concept like Satan, the devil, or evil in its cosmology because those are ideas from minds that are uncomprehending of an intricate science. The origin of the idea of Satan and the devil comes from the African netter Set as a function of nature. The Egyptian hieroglyphic word St in the Kemetic language functions in nature as negation, duality, fixation, and opposition. The Africans call these functions of nature netters. Set as a function is at the beginning of creation. Satan is a Hebrew cognate of the word Set that simply meant adversary, which is closer to the ancient African intention of the original idea. This next statement is a key to understanding how Set, as a function of nature, works in the universe, your life, and our lives as a connected collective within humanity. Please pay attention here. If you miss it, you'll go on repeating the same mantras like the Christian idea that we must pray and its conscious community equivalent of spread knowledge, both of which have not produced any lasting economic change in the African diaspora worldwide. Even worse, we beat up on each other looking at ourselves as some sort of defects, never realizing the reason is because we're applying the natural law of Set to our detriment. So why is praying and spreading knowledge not working? This will begin to give you a level of enlightenment of how the function of Set applies in your life. The function the ancient Egyptians called Set negated oneness or unity. In the ancient African language, the letters are more like a recipe than a name as we know it in modern times. By definition, negation as a function is destructive. It's erroneous to think of Set or any netter in terms of any type of entity with a personality or superpowers. That's what you'll erroneously hear or read all over the internet. This is huge for understanding what I'll state later for practical application. This is a deeper level of Kemetic knowledge that I'm going to give you. So understand, Set as a function in a pure philosophical sense is negation. So why does the devil have horns? When unity was negated, in ancient African terms, the universe separated and split. This meant that opposition and duality became an automatic function of the universe. Ancient Africans always used natural symbols to express metaphysical concepts. Many times these symbols were pre-language. In other words, they were used as gestures first before they were even used in language. Using natural symbols to express functions of nature is why early Egyptologists ignorantly thought that ancient Africans were worshiping animals. Early Egyptologists didn't understand how genius the ancient Africans were at leaving us clues on how to decipher their science. The natural symbol used to express separation were the horns of the cattle many native Africans tended. Whenever you see horns in ancient Egyptian symbolism, it's representing the idea of negation or duality. Negation and opposition are much better terms to understand the function of Set, so I can show you practical application later on in the screencast. When you access your life through negative or negative energy and function of Set, you will never be able to achieve unity. Why? Because again, by definition, the function of Set is negation, negative or separative. It's natural. That's why bashing each other will never bring us together. It's use of energy that is negative or negative. You'll not overcome natural law even while physical.